Today I'm going to show you how to make some easy, delicious, homemade vegan pastas. Don't be intimidated. These are not difficult to make. They may be time consuming, but they're not hard. These require no special tools, okay? We're mainly using just all kitchen tools and a ravioli stamp, and it's super easy to make them. Time consuming, but easy. So set aside some time, do this on like a Sunday afternoon, maybe get your kids involved or a significant other or friends or whoever. And the results are so worth it because homemade pasta is just the absolute best. As always, all the full read out recipes are on my blog. Everything's in the description box down below, and let's just get right into it. Starting off with an epitome of spring in a dish, we are making these amazing lemon pea ricotta ravioli, and obviously vegan ricotta, and I'm so excited to share these. I love making ravioli. When I was in Italy, I got the cute little star ravioli stamp, so I've been so excited to make some ravioli with these, and I think they came out perfect. So let me show you how to make them. Let's start off with making our filling. So we're going to add in half a block of super firm tofu, or you could use extra firm tofu. We're going to add in half a cup of frozen peas that I let thaw for a little bit, some salt, vegan parmesan, I'm using the one from Follow Your Heart, the juice of 1 lemon. I like to do this with a little strainer so that way no seeds get in there, and then some non-dairy milk, and then we're just going to blend this up until it is nice and smooth. This may take a few rounds of blending, and I like to add the non-dairy milk in gradually. I always like to add things in gradually so that way I can control how much is going in there. And then I tasted it, I want a little more salt, give it another blend, and we should be good to go. And you can add in as much or as little seasonings as you like. This is the consistency that we're going for, and yeah, now let's make our dough. So we're going to add in 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric for color, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, mix together all of our dry ingredients. Now we'll add in the wet, which is just half a tablespoon of olive oil, and then we're going to add in about half a cup plus a tablespoon of warm water. So I'm just slowly mixing this up to form a shaggy dough. This is what a shaggy dough means, just that it's in pieces. And then I will start to use my hands to mix it all together. I like to start in the bowl before transferring for kneading because it keeps things a little bit neater. I'll knead it into a fairly smooth ball, and that's it. Our ravioli dough is all done. You could also do this in a stand mixer if you want. So then I'm going to cut it up into 4 pieces. Cover the pieces I'm not using, and we're going to work with 1 piece of dough at a time. Flour your surface. This is my ravioli stamp. Isn't it just adorable? But you could also make ravioli with just a fork and a knife. So I'm taking my rolling pin, and this is where the elbow grease and labor of love and time-consuming process comes in. You are going to roll this out. I find it easiest to hold one side and then push the rolling pin and kind of act as if I were the pasta machine myself. And eventually, after rolling about 5-ish minutes, you'll get it to be nice and thin. You want to make this as thin as possible because we don't want our ravioli to be too thick. They won't cook up right. Then I'm using my little ravioli stamp to just space out where my filling is going to go. I like to do this. It helps me. Even if I don't perfectly line everything up when I fold it over, it just gives me a good placement. Don't overfill your ravioli, otherwise the filling is just going to spill out everywhere, and we don't want that. So go a little bit smaller than you think you should. I promise it'll be okay. Fold it over, and then just use your hands to kind of seal up and mark out where the filling is. And then at this point, if you were using a fork and knife, you could just cut it and then seal the edges with a fork, or use the ravioli stamp like I'm doing. They're super cheap and they're so cute. You can get them on Amazon and stuff. And that's it. And now you have these adorable little ravioli. I'm going to place these onto a floured surface while I make the rest of them. I take the scraps, roll them up, and then I just squish it in with the next dough ball, and we just keep on trucking through. Put some music on, put a movie on, something. This is the most time consuming part, but then you're gonna have these beautiful ravioli. How gorgeous are these? You'll have leftover filling, but don't worry, we're gonna do something with it. So to cook the ravioli is the easiest part. Pop it into boiling water. It'll cook in about 3 to 5 minutes. They'll float right to the top, and then I let them stay up there for another like minute or two, and then I'm just going to pop them in the pan with the peas. There's a little olive oil in there, and the pasta water that gets naturally dripped in will help. And then that's it. They're all done pretty much. You can just now put some lemon juice over top to make it extra zesty and zingy, and I did some lemon zest as well. So now on the bottom of my serving plate, I'll just spread some of that leftover filling, add as many ravioli as my heart desires, throw some peas on top, do a little more lemon zest as a garnish, and some flaky sea salt, and you're all done. And these are so gorgeous. Like, this is such a beautiful plate. I absolutely love them. So that's how you make our homemade ravioli. If you do have a pasta maker attachment for the KitchenAid, or if you just have anything like a pasta machine, it will definitely help, but you can totally do it with a rolling pin and you get an arm workout in, so it's an added bonus. And then you get left with this beautiful dish. I also think this would be great for Mother's Day coming up. I want to show you what the inside looks like. So they're nice and thin, which is what we want, because if they're too thick, it's just going to make not a good piece of pasta. And yeah, I'm going to take a bite of one. These are absolutely delicious. They're light, they're flavorful. I love the lemon and the pea together. So good. You can freeze these. I'll have all those kinds of instructions on the blog. And I hope you guys try these ones out, but we got more pastas to make, so let's do it. For our next recipe, we're going to be making homemade gnocchi. Gnocchi are a potato dumpling. There are different kinds of gnocchi in Italy, but today we're doing the potato version. And they look like this. I'm sure you've seen them in stores. People use them in all kinds of things, and they're absolutely delicious. They are one of my favorite pastas. Usually not vegan because they contain egg when you get them out. So, super easy. You just need potatoes and all-purpose flour and salt for this. These are not hard to make, they are time consuming, and you need to know a little bit what you're doing, but don't worry, I'll guide you and we'll do it, and it's gonna be delicious, and we make it with a homemade pesto. So let's go. To make our gnocchi, we need 4 to 5 russet potatoes, and I'm gonna wash them, pierce them with a fork, we're gonna wrap them in foil, and we're going to bake them in the oven about an hour at 400 degrees. And so they get nice and soft. You want to cook them in the oven and not boil them or steam them, because we don't want to put water into them. We actually want to dry them out. So that's why we're doing that. Or you can microwave them. In the meantime, let's make a super easy pesto. We're going to add in lots of fresh basil, obviously. I'm going to do walnuts. Typically, pesto has pignoli, but I didn't have any, so we can use walnuts. It's fine. A few garlic cloves, as little or as much as you like to make it garlicky. Vegan parmesan, olive oil, and salt. And then you're just going to blend that up in the food processor. If you really want to be fancy and do it with a pestle and mortar, you can, but it's time consuming. And I again like to add that olive oil in gradually so everything can just come together nicely. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of water just to help make it slightly creamy. And I love making the pesto this way. It's so delicious. So pesto's done, put it aside. After your potatoes are cooked and then cooled, let them cool at least like 5-10 minutes, you're going to peel the skins off, and it's very easy to do this with your hands or a spoon. Just be careful, obviously, because they're going to be hot. I have kitchen hands. I can touch things when they're pretty hot, but if you need a little bit of time, don't worry. And it's a little bit of a tedious process, but it'll go by fast. It's not that many potatoes. So now you can either use a potato ricer if you have one, but I feel like most people don't. So I just use the back of a fork, and I'm going to mash these up as smoothly as I possibly can. They're not going to be perfect, and that is okay, but as best as I can do it. And now we're going to start to add in our all-purpose flour, and we're going to do this very slowly, and I added in a little salt as well. The reason for that, this is where the sort of skill level, I guess, comes into making gnocchi. You will learn the more times you make gnocchi how wet the dough should be, because you want to add in as little flour as possible to keep these gnocchi light and fluffy, but you need to add in enough flour to make a dough. The measurements I give you is a great starting place, but I'm going to tell you a few things to help you kind of assess your dough. So you want your dough to obviously come together. You don't want it to be sticky to the touch, but when you cut it, you want to see a little tackiness and moisture in there. You should be able to roll it. You should be able to roll it into a little ball, and once you can do that, you're good to go. So I'm going to roll it out into a nice long log shape, and then I'm just going to cut as many of the gnocchi out as I want from there, maybe like 8 to 10 pieces per log. It just depends how big you want them to be. I roll them into a little ball, and then all you need is the back of a fork, and you could glide it down and it'll make the indent like a gnocchi board. If you have a gnocchi board, this is a great time to use it. Or if you don't feel like doing that, you can just cut them into the little like gnocchi pillows and leave them like little squares, or roll them into little balls. I like making the little edges because they look cute, but it's totally just dependent on what you want to do. And if you feel like your gnocchi is sticking, you can dip the back of your fork in some flour and you'll have these beautiful gnocchi. And now again, cooking is the easiest part. Salt some water, pop a few into boiling water. I like to do maybe 15 to 20 at a time, depends on how big your pot is, but you want them to have room to move around and to be able to float to the top. And then I scooped some of my pesto into a pan nearby, and we're just going to add the gnocchi in there. And again, as we gradually keep scooping the gnocchi as it cooks, we'll end up throwing some pasta water in there, which is great because pasta water is magic. Due to the pasta water having starch, it helps the sauce to stick to the pasta better. So these are our beautiful gnocchi. When they're all done, you'll have leftover pesto. Just keep it stored in the fridge, and you could use it sandwiches, vegan breakfast wraps, whatever you want to do. There's plenty of uses for pesto. But these gnocchi are out of this world. We're going to top it a little flaky sea salt and some fresh basil, and they're just beautiful. And my boyfriend loves them. My mom loves them. Everybody loves when I make gnocchi because it really comes out so good. So be patient and trust yourself. You can do it. I promise. And that's how you make our homemade gnocchi. And now you'll have these really fluffy, delicious dumplings. They should be nice and soft inside, and they're so good. Let's do a taste test. You guys should know me. I'm not really a bragger, but there's a few things my mom says that I can make better than her that come out amazing. One is my pesto, the other are my gnocchi, and there's a few other things, but those pertain to this recipe. So, and I just want to show you what the inside should look like. It should be soft, but it shouldn't be dense, and it should have like a light chew to it. So these are delicious, and let's make our next recipe. I hope you all have been enjoying the video so far, and we are going to make our last and final pasta recipe, and we are going to make just a basic fresh pasta. We're doing one with semolina flour and one with gluten-free all-purpose flour, and I guess we're making them into a tagliatelle, just like a nice thick noodle shape. I'll show you them both. So this is the semolina flour. Looks so good. And this is the gluten-free one, which I was very surprised with how good it came out. This is honestly the best gluten-free pasta I've ever had. I've eaten actually a decent amount of gluten-free pasta just because I like to try everything, and this is really good. So it's easy to make, they're delicious, and let's do it. For the last pasta recipe, I wanted to do something different, so we're going to use semolina flour, which, oh my goodness, I love semolina flour. Semolina bread is my favorite. So we're going to start by adding in 1 cup of semolina flour, a little bit of salt, mix that together. We're going to make a well in the middle, and it's just like a little circle to add liquids into. We're gonna add olive oil and warm water, and that is all you need to make this. Now, the really cool thing about semolina is when you start working with it, it's gonna be sandy and gritty. And as you knead it, it is going to turn super smooth. So it's really, really cool because you're gonna be making it and you're gonna be like, this does not feel right, and then it will be. So I'm gonna make it, it comes out these little bits, and then I'm gonna pour it out onto my counter, and you could use your dough scraper if you have one, and then I'm just going to use my hands to push and knead it together. Once it's relatively smooth, we'll continue to knead it for another about 5 to 10 minutes. You want to make a really, really smooth dough ball here, and you will know the texture has changed. And then we're going to cover this and let it sit for at least 20 minutes, like 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to work on our gluten-free version. So this was what I'm using. I actually got it at the bulk bin at my local store, but it's pretty comparable to the King Arthur's measure for measure. So adding in a cup of that, and then we're going to do turmeric and salt. The turmeric just gives some color, and the same things again, water and olive oil. So the same exact process that we just did, just replacing the flour and a few different, liquid measurements. Push it together, and then you don't need to knead this one for as long. We're just going to push it together with our hands and knead it for about maybe 2 to 3 minutes until it turns into a smooth ball like this. And then I'm going to let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. In the meantime, I just want to show you an easy sauce. I'm going to add into a pan olive oil, chopped carrots, tomatoes, garlic, and salt. And then you're going to let this cook low and slow for like 20 minutes until everything is caramelized. We'll come back to it in a minute. So now let's go back to our pasta. Everything's been sitting, cutting the dough in half. I always like to work with things in halves or quarters. We're going to start to roll the dough out again. If you find it is sticking, you can just pop a little semolina on there or even all-purpose flour, and then roll it out pretty thin like we did with the ravioli. It doesn't need to be as thin as the ravioli, but you do want it to be pretty thin because as the pasta cooks, it does kind of thicken up a little bit. So I rolled it out to be about that thickness. Now I'm going to use a pizza cutter to just make long noodles. You could use a knife, or you can also fold it into thirds and then cut it that way, but I just kind of liked having it out so I could see, and this worked really well for me. I don't really care about them obviously being perfect, and once you wrap them up in the bundles, they look so pretty. So now you'll just carefully pick the pasta up, and then of course we have to make it into like the pretty bundle shape. They look so good.
are so happy with these, and I just love how easy it is to make. And I made 2 bundles. We'll repeat the process with the remaining piece of the semolina dough. To prevent any sticking, I just sprinkled a touch more of semolina on the board and also on the pasta. And again, we will cover them. Covering it helps it not to dry out, so it's super important to keep it covered. Now onto the gluten-free dough, doing the same thing, cutting it in half, put some of the gluten-free all-purpose flour onto the board, and I'm just going to carefully roll it out. Now this is a stickier dough and a little less forgiving dough, so be patient with yourself. Keep either a knife or a dough scraper handy so you can get underneath it and keep your surface really well floured. This is just a less structurally sound dough. So before I cut it, I'm making sure that I can move it around freely, and I can, doing the same exact thing, cutting it into these long noodles. And yeah, I was super impressed though, because even though the dough was a little bit harder to work with, it was still easy, and just be patient with yourself. Add the gluten-free flour over top, and there we go. Now we have our beautiful bundles. Now back to our sauce, because we just want to make sure that our sauce is done before we start cooking the pasta, because the pasta is just going to cook up super quick. So everything was like caramelized soft. I added a little water in while I cooked it as well. And then I'm popping this in a blender. We'll blend it up. I'm going to check the texture and consistency. Obviously we need some liquid in there. Add in liquid to your thickness preference. And there we go. Popped it back in the pan with a few leaves of basil to let this cook over low heat while we cooked our pasta. Salting our pasta water always, and then popping that fresh pasta in there. This seriously cooks up in like 3 minutes, and doing the same thing with the gluten-free, and it also cooks up very quickly, like 3 to 5 minutes. Look at those noodles. These are stunning, gorgeous, and even the gluten-free ones, they were a little broken, but they're still beautiful, and so impressed with the texture on these. Seriously, so good. So now all that's left to do is of course add your sauce, and you can add any sauce to these you want, but I do highly recommend you try this sauce because it was delicious. And mix it all up, and that's it. I mean, how beautiful. And this is definitely the easiest pasta recipe to make out of all of them. This took me the least amount of time, and it doesn't require like too much skill, I don't think. Like anybody can do this, just be patient with yourself. And there we go. Pop them in a dish. We'll garnish with a little basil and red pepper flakes to each of them, and they're so beautiful. I'm sorry, but there's just like nothing more stunning to me than like a thick fat noodle. Absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Stunning, beautiful. It's the moment. It's everything.
How you make the pasta is super easy, and then you can keep them in the fridge. I do want to say that I think with the gluten-free one, because I was like taking pictures and trying to make it look pretty with the bundles, just cut them and throw it directly into boiling water, because I think it will lead to less breakage than I had, because they had been sitting in the bundles for probably about a half hour, just, you know, from recording and doing everything that I'm doing. Let's do taste test. I already actually know that they taste amazing, but I like to taste it on camera for you guys too. And the sauce on this is so good, by the way. Definitely make the sauce. I don't know. It's just so freaking good. Like, I don't have words. And like the piece of pasta is like chewy but light. Like it has like a little bite to it, but it's light. It melts in your mouth. And these are cold. These have been sitting here actually for a little bit too. And so now for the gluten-free one, which again I was very impressed with. So there it is. Obviously, like I said, these did break, but I mean, who cares at the end of the day too? Even if they break, they break. The texture on this one is a little bit mushier than the semolina, but not mushy, just a little softer. But it's really good. Like honestly, I made this and I was very surprised. I did not actually expect it to come out this good. So those were our easy pasta recipes. I hope this helps you out. I hope it helps you to see you don't need fancy equipment. You can make it at home with just the stuff you've already got in your kitchen, most likely. You know, rolling pins, forks, knives are the basics of what you need, and then you can just go from there. If you want to go crazy and buy ravioli stamps and a gnocchi board and all that stuff, you can, but you don't have to. I've been making pasta for years, homemade, and I've never gotten a pasta machine. Like I don't know, I like doing it with the rolling pin and everything. This thing about it's very therapeutic. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. If you make these recipes, let me know what you think. Let me know how it goes. Full run out recipes are on the blog. Links in the description box down below. Links for anything that you may need are down below. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon with a video. Bye!